Welcome, one and all, to the Hammer Territory Podcast. My name is Shawn Coleman. Hope wherever you are and wherever you are listening, thanks for tuning in with us. The start of the baseball season is here, and that's about one of the only positives that you can speak to when it comes to following the Atlanta Braves. And unfortunately, the hits just keep on coming, as we're going to discuss in this kind of a emergency podcast, if you will, but not for the usual good reasons that we do emergency podcasts. As always, my podcast partner here with me, Stephen Tolbert. Stephen, I'd ask how you were, sir, but I kind of already know, regardless of the circumstances. Good to speak to you again, as always.
Yeah, what's up, buddy? I'm not going to say this has been like the worst possible start, because there was always like Chris Sale injury stuff that I thought, like, if you were actually dreaming up like the worst case scenario for how the Braves could start this season, there'd be something wrong with Sale or something wrong with Strider, or Acuna has a setback. So I'm not going to say this is the worst case scenario, but getting your ass beat for 4 games the way they did against San Diego, having the offense not show up, having the bullpen be just as big a question. And then we get to Monday with game 1 against the Dodgers later tonight, and we find out that Jurickson Profar has been suspended for 80 games for PEDs. Yeah, that's up there. I mean, the Braves, that's up there with about as bad a first 5 days of the season as we could possibly have. So yeah, I guess it's good to be on with you. I don't know.
I don't know either. And of course, in this situation, we know the end result. There's a lot we don't know in terms of what, has occurred. We know some of the details. So we're just going to stick with the facts and mainly focus on, obviously, how it impacts the Braves now into the near future and, long term as well. But the simple, straightforward information to deliver is this: Jurickson Profar, who is the big offseason addition for the Braves, he has been suspended 4 games into the season. His suspension will be 80 games, as you normally see when it comes to a first-time offender, when it comes to PEDs. He was found to have taken a performance-enhancing drug called HCG. I don't know a lot of details about it. It seems like there have been other baseball players who have taken it in the past. All I know that really matters to the Braves is that you can't take it. And that, of course, is what has occurred. So basically that means for the next 80 games, basically the first half of the season, the Braves will be without Jurickson Profar. Perhaps even more significant is the fact that since Profar is suspended within this Major League Baseball season, he also will be ineligible for the playoffs for the Braves. So if the Braves make the playoffs, which we'll get into, in another episode, the point I'm getting at is that basically Jurickson Profar is not only out for the first half of this season, he is also out for the playoffs if the Braves were to make it. And the immediate reaction here, Stephen, is, the hits just keep on coming. When it rains, it pours, what have you. But in terms of Profar itself, a couple of things, couple bullet points that come to it is, okay, now you don't get the benefit of the big offseason addition that you made in an offseason where it certainly seemed that our resources were a bit more limited than many of us had thought. This was the headlining move. Well, now not only do you not get to benefit from that addition for the first half of this season, but also for the playoffs. What does that mean long-term in terms of the level that addition is going to add value? Is it going, how much did, potentially these performance-enhancing drugs benefit him during his 2024 season? Again, not going to get into all those details, but those are the first thoughts that come to mind. Not only do you get to benefit from having Jurickson Profar, you don't get to benefit from having him in the lineup, but to what extent will you benefit from him when he returns? I think both of those things are fair to question.
Yeah, I mean, it's just brutal. There's no, his suspension is unpaid, which basically means he's going to be about half of his expensive as he was going to be. So the Braves are going to save about $6 million. What they do with that money, we'll see. That's a whole separate thing. But yeah, I mean, it is fair to question that. Profar had things in his profile that he did in 24 that caused the Braves to give him $42 million, obviously. And the fair question is, how much of those things are real and how much of those things are because of performance-enhancing drugs? Now, according to Profar, he was tested about 8 times last year. And that's normal. Listen, the guy was having a breakout season at the age of 30, 31 years old. When that happens, you're going to get tested every other week. I mean, baseball calls it random. It's not random. Like he got tested a ton last year, and obviously never popped once. And so I don't know what I mean, I guess none of us know what happened, and we probably won't know what happened. Only Jurickson really knows what happened. But that tells me that at least the things that he was doing better in his profile maybe are a little more real. If he was taking this last year, he would have got popped as much as he got tested. So I don't know if it was because of the injury he sustained in spring training that he took something to try to get back. I don't know. I mean, we'll never know, probably. But he took more walks last year. That steroids aren't going to help you take more walks. So it's possible that there are things in his profile that are still going to be good once he gets back, but it's fair to question it. It is. It's 1,000% fair to question it. Like if there are fans who are like, no, I don't believe it, then I'm not going to argue with it. Cause like that's how I've thought about PED users in the past. So, yeah, it's fair to question. And so, yeah, it's fair to ask how much of this contract are the Braves going to get any value from? They're obviously not going to get value in the first 80 games of this year or in the postseason this year. So, they do get that money back, of course, but yeah, the last 2 years of the contract, what do they get? I mean, what kind of hitters Profar are really going to be? So that's fair. That's a fair question. And, we're going to get into a second what the Braves are going to do in the meantime, but it just sucks. It just real. I mean, it was literally the Braves' only big move of the winter. I tell you what, for people who thought Alex had a bad winter before this, they're going to have a field day now because I mean, his one big move is now tainted. So yeah, I mean, that turns into just a brutal offseason for the Braves. I mean, there's no way to say it. The Braves just had an absolutely brutal offseason because their one move is now suspended for 80 games for PEDs. So a bad start to the season just got substantially worse.
And the unfortunate thing is the turn is, of what we know about Profar's profile is the fact that, okay, maybe he doesn't live up to the upside of being an all-star like he was last year. But to your point, the one skill that he did have was the ability to get on base and consistently get on base, consistently work counts. That was probably one of the main reasons he was signed, was to be able to fill that void that we saw pop up so much without Acuna and others last year. Well, now we're going to be without Profar. And I don't mean to, minimize, of course, his absence, but he's played 4 games with the Braves. We now know that he's not going to be here for half the season or the postseason. The focus turns to, okay, how do you fill that void that you had hoped he would fill? And it becomes even more important to fill it quickly because of the start to the season that we had. And when we break down all the different things that Profar was supposed to eventually bring to this team, it was going to be as a top of the order bat that can extend the lineup, can extend pitches, and get on base frequently. So, Steven, that's the thing that pops to me, is that you now are going to be without a reliable leadoff hitter for probably the next month and a half till Acuna gets back. Who fills that void? I think that we'll get into the names here in a second of who can play left field, and I think they're going to be able to field and left field just fine. But who fills that void at the top of the order, which we desperately need right now to be able to get back on track?
Yeah, I mean, that was literally his most valuable skill to the Braves, is that he was a high on base guy. And when, we've learned plenty of times over the years that when Acuna is out, the Braves sorely miss specifically that skill, because that is unique to Ronald in this lineup, in that he consistently runs 400 on base. Even last year when he wasn't having the best year before he got hurt, his on base percentage was like 380. Because he just walks a ton. I mean, pitchers are always afraid of him, so he just walks a ton. On top of whatever he gets, when he hits. So it's a math. I mean, that is the biggest, though the single biggest impact for this team will be the lack of on base that they lose because of this, this suspension. That is the single. Now, defense, there's probably some locker room stuff. I know Jurickson is considered like a beloved guy in baseball. This probably will change that a little bit, to be fair. But his on-base skills, his ability to work counts, that is the single biggest thing that the Braves are going to miss here, because they don't have a ton of that. I mean, Ozzie Albies, Michael Harris, Jared Kelnick, the guys that you kind of think of that might be able to fill that role, none of them have that skill. They all strike out, more than they walk. They all walk at, kind of a 5% clip or less. None of them really work counts very well. I mean, that was the big problem last year. And so that was why Profar was added, was to solve that problem. And so now you take him out again and you're left with the same problem from last year. So yeah, we'll get into the names here in a minute. The Braves made a trade today. But that one skill, the on-base skill, the ability to work counts, is far and away the most valuable thing Profar was going to bring to this team. And it was supposed to be most valuable while Acuna was out. Well, now they're not going to have him for a while Acuna's out. They'll get him back at some point. But yeah, it just sucks. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It just sucks.
Take me out to my TV on FanDuel Sports Network. Yeah. Watch me some dingers and RBIs. I'm just glad they have my local team live for its root. We'll root for the Bravos. If they don't win, it's a shame. Braves games, announcers, and more Braves games. FanDuel Sports Network has the Braves. Stream now.
Well, and I think that you bring up a very interesting dynamic that many may not think of, but I think is significant, especially for a clubhouse that around baseball, many have talked about being one of the best clubhouse atmospheres. You lose so many veterans, long-term Braves, clubhouse leaders, and Charlie Morton, Max Fried, AJ Minter, Travis Arnaud, so on and so forth. You lose all those clubhouse staples. You bring in Jurickson Profar, who he himself is considered to be a good clubhouse addition. Well, now not only are you going to be without him, now when he comes back, I don't know if awkward's the right word, but it certainly is not going to be what it once was. Given that, and the fact that they've lost so many, sources of constant in the clubhouse, considering the start to the season that they've had, and now this fallout. I mean, Steven, do you give any worry to that causing issue within the clubhouse? Not in terms of negativity, but in terms of what the Braves need, that chemistry they need to get back going in the right direction. This certainly doesn't help that be in the best position that you would hope it would be to get the season going right.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to guys talk about PED users in the past, and they don't speak highly of them. And like you said, the Braves are without a lot of their leaders that they've had in the past in that clubhouse. I know Chris Sale is kind of the guy now, but it might get awkward, quite honestly. It really might. I mean, it might get, I'm guessing when he comes back, they'll open him, they'll welcome him back with open arms, because that's kind of what you do for teammates. When Ozuna went through his domestic violence suspension, I don't want to compare the two. Obviously, domestic violence is a whole different level. But, when he went through that whole thing, he came back and he's still kind of considered a beloved member of that clubhouse. So, I don't know how big a deal it's going to be. But if you told me it was going to be a big deal, it wouldn't shock me. Again, there are plenty of players in baseball that despise guys who use performance-enhancing drugs because they feel like it takes money away from clean players. And so obviously with Jurickson Profar just signing a pretty large free agent contract, there are going to be plenty of people around baseball that despise him because they feel like he stole that money. Is that fair to say? I don't know. I mean, I'm not in the clubhouse and I don't know what these drugs have done for Profar, when he started taking them or when he got popped. I'm still kind of waiting on a timeline to be dropped by somebody, a reported timeline on all this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what to expect. I would expect, I would expect they welcome him back with open arms, but there could be some awkward moments. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And shifting gears a bit, discussing, Profar, obviously the details of, why he's going to be absent. Again, the focus turns to, okay, this is one of those situations where you're not going to be able to moneyball your way through this in terms of figuring out a way on the fly to be able to replicate his on-base skills or, the value that he can add from the leadoff spot. But this does bring to light, Steven, a bit more, sense around, the Braves made a flurry of moves a few weeks before the season and now even into the season, and a couple of moves that weren't necessarily head scratching, but you were kind of like, okay, they're adding a lot of outfield depth, signing Alex Verdugo to a major league contract right before the season, today trading for former Cincinnati Reds outfielder Stuart Fairchild. Those moves were made, and you're thinking, okay, are they potentially going to option maybe Brian De La Cruz or Jared Kelenic to the minors? And then, of course, we get this news about Profar. So the first thing that stands out is, okay, are both the Verdugo signing and the trade for Fairchild a result of what they knew about Profar? And now that we know that Profar is not an option, what's kind of the hierarchy of these four depth options? You know, throw Jared Kelenic in there, who we'll discuss in just a moment. But Stephen, your thoughts on the timing of the Verdugo and Fairchild moves, and also your thoughts, you know, on how their roles, how their importance for the organization certainly just rose.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted a timeline, because I kind of want to know when the Braves found out. Did they find out today? You know, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. Did they find out today and that's why they traded for Fairchild? I don't know. Oftentimes the league will inform the player and the team that this is coming, you know, to try to get the appeal out of the way before it's announced publicly. So I don't know how long the team has known about this, and I don't know when Jurickson popped this positive test. You know, if it happened 2 weeks ago and the Braves knew about it, and, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Verdugo was then a reaction to that. I don't know that for sure, though. They might have literally just found out today. So I don't know when the Braves found out. Again, we're recording this about an hour after all this dropped, so we're still. I keep checking my phone to make sure I don't miss an update, because I don't want to say anything wrong into a microphone. But we don't know when the Braves found out, and therefore it's hard to tell exactly what their motives were for these moves. I will say this: the Verdugo signing didn't make a ton of sense to me at the time it happened, because they already had Profar, they already had Harris, they already had Acuna, they already had Kelenic, they already had De La Cruz. They gave him a major league deal. Like, it just seemed weird, a weird way to spend money when there were other parts of the team that needed attention. So, but maybe they just did that for depth. You know, they might not have known anything about this at that point. So I don't know. I think the Fairchild move today, and we're going to talk about him more in a second, I think that's clearly a reaction to this. I mean, obviously they needed another outfielder. So, so yeah, we'll find out more in the days to come. There'll be more announcements. There'll be more tweets, more on the record about, you know, timelines and stuff like that. But none of it's good. You know, none of it's good. None of it is helpful, especially when the team's 0. You know, if the team was 4-0 and coming off a big series sweep of San Diego, maybe, you know, today would still suck, but maybe it wouldn't suck so much. But yeah, I'm honestly still kind of processing all this. We jumped on immediately after we heard, because that's what we do. But what a just a kick to the nuts. I mean, it's serious. I mean, good Lord, the start of this season. I mean, this is where you restart the Xbox and start it over. I mean, geez. I mean, this is unreal.
Or this may even be to the point where you take the Xbox into the backyard and just run over it with the lawnmower. You know, that may be a more satisfying outcome from this. But okay, we've gotten the details of Jurickson Profar. He is out of the equation for half the year and for the playoffs. So what have the Braves done to be able to look at getting depth in their organization, to be able to say, okay, hey, if something were to happen to one of our outfielders, we've now got options that we can explore. None of the options are going to be better than what they had, but they now basically have a two-tiered platoon approach. You've got Jared Kelenic and Alex Verdugo, who are going to be your left-handed options against right-handed pitching. You've also got Brian De La Cruz and Stuart Fairchild as your right-handed versus left-handed options. So those are the details. The other thing, before we get to the details of that question, Stephen, we do want to say we're getting breaking news as we are doing this podcast. As we are doing the podcast on Jurickson Profar's 80-game suspension, it's just come through that starter Reynaldo Lopez has been added to the injured list. The Braves are calling up Bryce Elder. The details of the move to the injured list for Reynaldo Lopez will come out later on, obviously, but we'll get into that in just a moment. first, Steven, let's focus on the depth options when it comes to the outfield. You've got Kelenic and Verdugo as your options, left-handers versus right-handers. You've got Brian De La Cruz and Stuart Fairchild as your option versus left-handers. You're hoping that at least one, maybe two of those outfielders figures it out to be reliable depth.
FT fam, legends never die. That is the motto for Homage. Go to homage.com and get yourself maybe one of these tees. This was one of my favorites from spring training. Got a little Grapefruit League action. Nice, iconic looking logo. And behind me on the back is all the teams that are listed for the Grapefruit League. You've got, of course, if you're more of an Arizona person, you've got the t-shirt for that too. But Kratz, I just love the way that they give you the highest quality material and then a little vintage action if you're looking for it.
I love the vintage. I've been a baseball fan my whole life, and teams change their logos. If you're looking for a logo that your team used to have, Homage is your place to go. Go cop one of the old logos from the major league teams that maybe they don't use anymore.
Yeah, homage.com/foul territory. Go to the website and then use the code foul territory, the name of our show, for 20% off if you're a first-time purchaser on the website. Go check it out, FT fam.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Verdugo is solid. He's not great. I mean, he's kind of like Kelenic. And that's why the Verdugo signing was so strange to me, because it felt very redundant to Kelenic. I think you and I talked about it the night it happened. Just felt like redundant players. But obviously now, without Profar, they both can play at the same time. So it makes more sense. And then, yeah, Fairchild and De La Cruz. Fairchild, he came over. He just got traded today from the Reds. He's got power, actually. I think he's got like 18 homers and 600 career plate appearances or something like that. So he's got a decent amount of pop. He's a good defender in center field. I'm sure that's what the Braves kind of like, these power defensive guys. That's kind of what Kelnic's reputation was when he came over too, was power and defense. Kind of what Michael Harris's reputation is. So, it's not an unusual fit for them, but I mean, they're one more kind of fourth, fifth outfitter types that you're just hoping you can kind of platoon to death until Ronald comes back. And, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that those guys are going to be game changers in any way or are going to be impact players for the Braves, but it's probably better than running Luke Williams out there. So, yeah, that's kind of all I got on Stuart Fairchild. I'm sure he's gonna get a chance to play more than he probably ever has in Cincinnati, but we'll see. He's gonna get a chance to, maybe Ramon Laureano this thing and be an impact player for the Braves out of nowhere.
Yeah, if one of these guys can turn into Ramon Laureano, and again, we've talked about it time and time again. It's one of my favorite things that I used to love to talk about the Braves, and you got to hope that it comes through again, then being able to make the most of players, being able to get them back to their best times outside of the organization, coming in and maybe doing better than many had thought. But let's kind of, go back over what we've discussed and where we are now, because I know we're kind of all over the place when it comes to order of operations for the podcast, because again, we're getting a lot of news at once. We're in the middle of discussing the podcast, and in a podcast discussing the suspension to Jurickson Profar, who's out 80 games due to performance-enhancing drug usage. We've already discussed the fallout from Profar and the options that are there. We'll get into back in just a moment, but as we're doing this podcast, it's just become official that starter Reynaldo Lopez, who many, as we got further into spring training, were kind of concerned when it came to velocity, kind of concerned when it came to him just not being as crisp as we saw him all last year. It was revealed he's already made a start this season. He is on the 15-day injured list now with right shoulder inflammation. So it seems like we've gotten a bit of a reason as to why he just didn't seem himself in spring training and through his first start. Bryce Selder, a familiar name, has been called up, likely will take his spot in the rotation. Steven, I know we don't have a lot of information on that right now. Your initial thoughts on just another hit early in this season for the Braves?
I'm about to go jump off a roof. I mean, what is happening?
We don't need to put you on the injured list for the podcast, Steven. Please don't do that.
I mean, come on. I mean, okay. So Reynaldo Lopez is now in the IL. I guess not stunning given the spring that he had, the lack of velocity. I actually thought the velocity ticked up in his first start against San Diego. He didn't look great. Obviously, he didn't get any swing and miss, but I thought that was more about command than anything. But obviously,
97, 98. I didn't expect to see that, but it was there in that first start. You're right.
yeah, I mean, it ticked up as his start went along. So I was actually starting to feel better about it. I just thought it was kind of a command and getting sharp type of thing, but obviously not. Obviously, he had some sort of issue, and you never want to see shoulder. Honestly, shoulder and elbow are the two things that you just don't want to see on any injury report. It doesn't mean it's going to be serious, but shoulder injuries are just the worst for pitchers these days, probably worse than elbow injuries at this point. So we'll see. I mean, here we go with Bryce Elder. There's going to be a lot of people talking about the fact that the Braves did not add a starting pitcher in the offseason when everybody kind of thought they needed one. Reynaldo threw more innings last year than he had thrown in the 5 seasons before, 4 seasons before that, because he was a reliever. And so, we had these questions about how would Reynaldo hold up after all the innings he threw last year? How would Sale hold up after all the innings he threw last year? How would Schwellenbach hold up after all the innings he threw last year? And of course, we're not even a week into the season and Reynaldo goes down. So, listen, it was not a good offseason for Alex Anthopoulos. I think we can pretty confidently say that. This is just kind of one more kick to the nuts, quite honestly. Bryce Elder's solid. I mean, he's a decent, 6th, 7th starter in an organization. But I guess that means he's going up against the Dodgers. When was Reynaldo scheduled to pitch? He was scheduled to pitch the 3rd game against the Dodgers, right?
No, bullpen game tonight, Sale tomorrow, and then
Reynaldo the 3rd.
It was Reynaldo. You're right. It was Reynaldo. Yeah.
So Elder's going to have to pitch against the Dodgers. So, prepare yourself for that mentally or, emotionally, or however you have to prepare yourself for that. It just sucks. I mean, this season sucks. The first 5 days of this season have sucked. And so, maybe this will be the low point and we got 6 more months of something to look forward to, but this is a brutal, brutal start.
Yeah, it's one of those things where they talk about, Stephen, where, you couldn't have scripted it. Like, even if you had the chance to make Hollywood script out the start of the season in the worst way possible, they still wouldn't have been able to do it this bad. But hey, last year, we started off excellent in the month of April, and that's what kept our head above water when we went through 5 terrible months of the season. Maybe we're just trying to get the worst stuff out of the way in the first 5 days of the season. Then things will start to get incrementally better. Again, that's more of a hope and prayer type situation. But I think that now, without Reynaldo Lopez, and even if it is a short-term thing, is it going to be lingering? Is it going to affect his overall effectiveness as a pitcher, with not only in the back of its mind, but could it be something that's recurring? Just a lot of questions. And so that just goes back to kind of what we talked about so much, Stephen, is the fact that those questions, especially about depth, as spring training went along, they remained in place and they got louder. They got louder. They got louder. The other thing that stands out to me is that I think we're going to continue to see Alex Anthopoulos be active in the early start to the season. I feel like the Stuart Fairchild move may not be the last move that we see in terms of a trade or in terms of, Alex Anthopoulos going to get a player who likely is not going to be in the Braves organization for long, but at least can provide depth for now. The other byproduct of all this happening is we may continue to see Alex Anthopoulos make moves early in the season just to try to keep depth in place. And hopefully we won't lose anybody else significant as we move forward through April.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he does. Spencer Strider is supposed to be back in probably about 2 weeks. They're not going to rush him just because of this. So, maybe Bryce Elder can hold down the fort and Grant Holmes and AJ Smith-Shawver. But yeah, they could definitely trade. I mean, it's just hard to make trades this time of year unless the guy is already kind of on. I mean, the reason they traded for Fairchild is because the Reds had DFA'd him on opening day and you get 10 days to trade a guy. And so, he wasn't part of their opening day plan. So the Braves traded for him. I guess there will be guys like that out there the Braves could go get. Technically guys like Lance Lynn, I think, are still free agents. I don't know. I mean, this offseason taught us don't even try to predict what the hell the Braves are going to do, what Alex is going to do, because we thought they would add 3 or 4 pitchers this offseason between the bullpen and the rotation, and they didn't add any, at least on a major league deal. So I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. depends on, I guess how well Bryce Elder pitches. It's a tough draw that his first game is going to be against the Dodgers. That's brutal. It's going to be tough to watch, I imagine. But yeah, I'm afraid to keep talking. I don't know if we're going to get more news that somebody else is hurt, before this podcast ends. But good Lord, man, what did we do? Like what happened? I don't know. I don't know what happened.
Well, so what does this all mean, though, for what we do know? We don't know what else is going to come down the pipeline. We don't know what to expect from Jurickson Profar. We don't know what to expect from Reynaldo Lopez when it comes to his injury. But what I do know is that it is now the time of the chat in which we're going to put a spotlight on a certain player. And it's a player that we've talked about quite a bit when it comes to spring training and about opportunity and about being able to bounce back when it comes to taking advantage of making the most of his time with the Braves. And of course, we'll give you the details on this spotlight segment presented by FanDuel. But when it comes to how are we going to not replace Jurickson Profar, but my question becomes, who really has the most opportunity? Who would be most ideal to take a step forward and become a big-time contributor for the Braves? And I put the spotlight directly on Jarred Kelenic. Of those four options that we discussed, Jarred Kelenic, Brian De La Cruz, Stuart Fairchild, and Alex Verdugo, Kelenic has the biggest upside. We saw him do this last year. We saw him step up, take ownership of that leadoff spot. It was for a month. Yes, it didn't last throughout the season, but for a month, in the month of June last year, he was a big-time contributor in a time when we needed it the most. We need that again. I'm not saying that there should be a lot of faith in seeing what he can and seeing what he can do, but Kelenic, we talked about it. It was a time to show up. It was a sink or swim season, Stephen. Now is the time for him to step up and show that he can live up to the potential that he showed in the minors and for 2 months in 2023. The opportunity is even more there for him now than it was previously. To make the most of this situation, I feel the spotlight is directly on Jarred Kelenic to live up to his potential and become a reliable part of the Braves lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect, you would think one of these left-handed outfielders, because that's what they just lost. So either Kelenic or Verdugo. We don't know when Verdugo's coming up. He signed a major league deal, so you think as soon as he's ready, he has to be up. But I don't know what the exact date is. But yeah, I mean, until he comes up and gets some playing time, it's got to be Kelenic. I mean, we spent so much time talking about how the Braves were more balanced against right-handed pitching because they added Profar, they added Drake Baldwin, they had Kelenic and Michael Harris and Olsen. And now they lose Profar, and if Drake Baldwin goes down when Shawn Murphy comes back up, then now you're kind of back to the same thing where you're just this, so susceptible to right-handed pitching. And so, yeah, it's got to be one of these left-handed outfitters, and Kelenic is the prime example because he's the guy on the roster right now. They need him. They need him to be the guy. The Braves gave up a lot of money last year to trade for him. I mean, they're still paying David Fletcher down in the minors because they traded for Jarred Kelenic. I mean, this was all in response to getting Kelenic last year from the Mariners. They ended up paying like $20-something million plus whatever they're paying David Fletcher, so they obviously believed in him very, very strongly to do it. He did not have a good year last year outside of 1 month. They released the lineup tonight. Michael Harris is leading off. I don't know if I don't know what they're going to, I don't know if they're going to platoon Harris and Ozzie and just have Harris lead off against righties and Ozzie lead off against lefties. But for that specific role of left field, then yeah, Jarred Kelenic has to step up, and my guys just got to learn how to take some walks, quite honestly. I mean, a 30% strikeout rate and a 5% walk rate is just a brutal way to go through life. And it's one of the reasons he's never been able to establish himself as a major league player, because you can't strike out 6 times for every 1 walk. You just can't. I mean, that's just, you just have so little, to produce anything when you're striking out at that rate versus how often you're walking. So, and my guy can take some walks. He's already hit a home run this year, but the rest of his bats have looked pretty awful, to be honest. That would help a lot. But yeah, the Braves need one of these left-handed outfielders in absence of Profar until Acuna comes back. They need one of these left-handed guys to step up, and Kelnic's on the roster right now, so you would have to start with him.
Absolutely. And absolutely. And we talk about, stepping up. Well, you want to talk about stepping up. That's exactly why this segment is presented by FanDuel. FanDuel has stepped up to offer the opportunity at the beginning of the baseball season for you to be able to take advantage of being able to see your favorite teams, including the Braves, in a easy way that allows for you to have access when you want it to be able to enjoy the Braves. As you can see below, the FanDuel Sports Network Player Spotlight today, it was Jared Kelenic. We'll be looking to do that nearly every episode. But if you use the code baseball30 at FanDuel/sportsnetwork.com/packages, you'll be able to take advantage of this FanDuel offer.
You can now stream Braves games through FanDuel Sports Network, and if you use the promo code baseball30, that's promo code baseball30, you can start it off with a 30-day extended free trial at FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. That is FanDuelSportsNetwork.com/packages. Promo code baseball30. Offer expires 5/2/25, $19.99 a month after free trial. Cancel during free trial to avoid charges. Eligibility restrictions apply. Visit FanDuelSportsNetwork.com for details.
Of course, that was the FanDuel spotlight of the day on Jared Kelenic, but you can put that spotlight on any number of players. And as we wrap up this pretty somber edition of the Hammer Territory podcast, Stephen, there's one other player who I think that it at least is a fun way to end the podcast, and that is the return of the beloved Uncle Jesse. Jesse Chavez has returned to Atlanta. The one other move, the move that, kind of was, okay, this makes sense. The this makes sense move of the day. Hector Neris, who did not have a good start to the season for the Braves, designated for assignment, and as they brought him back right before the season, Jesse Chavez is back for another stint with the Braves. Stephen, your thoughts on that blockbuster move?
I mean, sure. What the hell? You and I talked about it. I think you and I did a show right before the season started where I said it's good that the Braves are adding depth with these guys, but it's probably not great that they're still shuffling their bullpen to this level this late in the it's like if you were taking a test and they gave you an hour to finish the test, and at the 59-minute mark, you start erasing answers and putting down new answers. Like, that's not a great sign. And so that's kind of how I feel. They've already DFA'd Hector Neris because he looked terrible. Maybe let's not have a guy who only pitched 3 times in spring training and signed in the middle of March have a guaranteed spot in the bullpen. That's probably something to think about. The fact that he came in the 7th inning in a 1-run lead on opening day. He came in a high leverage spot on opening day and then gets DFA'd 3 days later is unreal. In a day of unreal things, maybe the most unreal thing still is that Hector Neris was pitching the 7th inning with a 1-run lead 3 days ago and now is DFA'd. But yeah, Jesse Chavez is back. He's probably going to suck because he's, a million years old. But, with Jesse Chavez, like, time and space don't really factor in. It's like I don't know what it is. It's like a Superman thing. I don't know when he puts on a Braves uniform, like, the laws of physics no longer apply to him. So I don't know. Maybe he's going to be awesome. I still can't believe the Braves didn't add like a real reliever this offseason. That's mine. Every time the Braves trade out one of these minor league guys for another one, that's kind of my takeaway is like, yeah, okay, they might be decent, but like, why wouldn't you just go get a real, I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing. I'm in a bad mood. So I'm not going to say too much else, but yeah, Jesse Chavez is back. I know some people are excited. I don't know. I don't know what to expect. He's probably, he's like 50 years old, so he's probably going to suck, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. That kind of, defines the day for the Braves and, going forward. And a couple of final thoughts. First off, I'll say this. If it seems like we're a bit more discombobulated, a bit more flustered in this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast, it's for sincere reasons. We're fans just like, those listeners who are so thankful, tune in each and every time to get our opinions, to value our opinions when it comes to covering the Braves. It's been a frustrating day. It's been a frustrating start to the season, and it just keeps worse, it seems. But the thing that I'll say is this, is that it's amazing to see what happens when you get that first win. And it may not come tonight. Hopefully it comes this weekend. But even if it doesn't, just getting that first win, I think will be a huge step in the right direction. Where that direction leads, who's involved in that direction from this point on, those blanks will be filled as time goes on. But like I say, I'm not going to say getting this out of the way to start the season. This sucks. It absolutely is probably one of the worst case scenarios when it comes to starting the season. But I am still going to enjoy watching Braves baseball tonight, and I hope you do as well. And I want to say this, Stephen, as we wrap up this edition of the Hammer Territory podcast. It's always a pleasure to do this with you. I just want to get back to talking winning Braves baseball with you, man. I think it's going to happen at some point this week, but I look forward to it when it does.
A single win would do a lot for the Braves right now. I mean, like if the Braves could just go win a game tonight, that would help a ton. They're playing the best team on the planet, maybe the best team ever assembled. So, I wouldn't expect a lot, but yeah, a win tonight would help a lot.
Absolutely. And we're going to be with you for all of the latest when it comes to the Braves, obviously both off the field as well as on the field. Brad and Scott will be back with you. So will Stephen and I throughout the week, breaking down the Braves matchup against the Dodgers. Make no mistake about it. Yes, the Braves are going to be without Profar. Unfortunately, they're going to be without Lopez, but this is clearly two of the best teams in Major League Baseball, record to the side, who are going to be playing against each other. Hopefully the Braves can at least get one victory, and then we can head back to Atlanta and really get this season started on the foot that we had hoped to start it on last week. But for all the latest, we will be with you here on the Hammer Territory podcast, part of the Foul Territory family of podcasts. You can find myself and Steven at StatsSAC, myself, Steven at _Outliers, all on Twitter. You can find Hammer Territory across all forms of social media as well as Foul Territory. Steven, anything else from you, sir?
Nobody get hurt. Let's just try to get through the game without anybody getting hurt and nobody being suspended for PED use. The bar is pretty low right now. So I'm not looking for a win. Let's just get through the game with no one getting hurt and no one being suspended. If we could do that, then it might be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm going to knock. I don't have any wood around me, but I'm going to knock on the nearest piece of wood that I can find. The great thing about hitting rock bottom is the only way that you can go is up. Hopefully that's where we are so far as this season goes, and we'll be better off for it as the season progresses. For Stephen Tolbert, my name's Shawn Coleman. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Hammer Territory podcast.